The owners of miniature Japanese vehicles are looking to a lawyer now for help. In February, we told you state lawmakers were considering a proposal to legalize miniature K-cars.
The proposal failed, but the K-car drivers say they're still fighting.
Imagine buying the perfect little work truck, only to be told you can't drive it anymore. That's the reality for thousands of drivers in 12 states, where imported pickup trucks are being banned in silence. No press coverage, no public outcry, just quiet revocations and closed-door decisions. Is this about safety or something far more political? And are you next? Stay to the end. Stay with me, because the final state didn't just ban the trucks. They went after the owners too. Florida, the legal battle that changed everything. What made the Mitsubishi minicab pickup so appealing to Florida owners was its unbeatable practicality. With its compact size, exceptional fuel economy, and low maintenance costs, it quickly became the go-to vehicle for small businesses, delivery drivers, and rural residents who needed a reliable, affordable utility truck. Weighing around 1,500 pounds with a modest engine under 660 cubic centimeters, the minicab could navigate tight urban streets or sandy backroads with equal ease. Its low curb weight eliminated the need for commercial licensing, and the vehicle's parts were simple, accessible, and affordable. Then came the shock. In the spring of 2023, Florida's Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles began retroactively canceling existing registrations for hundreds of imported mini-trucks, including the Mitsubishi minicab. Truck owners who had legally registered their vehicles under federal import laws were blindsided by sudden letters informing them that their trucks were now considered non-compliant and no longer road legal. There was no warning, no transition period, and no clear appeal process. Within weeks, business owners who depended on their trucks found themselves stranded, legally and financially. But what happened next transformed Florida from just another enforcement state into ground zero for legal resistance. A group of owners organized a lawsuit challenging the legitimacy of the state's retroactive enforcement. They argued that the vehicles met federal standards under the 25-year import exemption and that state agencies could not overrule federal classifications without due process. What made this legal battle even more explosive was what emerged during court discovery. Internal documents pointing to coordinated lobbying pressure from domestic auto manufacturers. This was no longer a technical policy dispute. It had become a test of whether powerful corporate interests could influence state policy to eliminate competition. The lawsuit is still ongoing, but it has galvanized a community of import owners, legal activists, and transportation advocates across the country. But while Florida's resistance played out in court, the next state banned trucks with nothing but a memo. Illinois, banned by a bureaucrat's footnote. The Mazda Scrum became popular in Illinois for the same reason it did across much of the Midwest. It was incredibly practical. With its cab-forward design, rear-wheel drive, and reliable small-displacement engine, it offered a perfect solution for tradesmen, landscapers, and urban delivery businesses. The vehicle was small enough to navigate alleyways and downtown loading zones, but still had a usable truck bed and an efficient drivetrain. It was the kind of pickup truck that let people get to work without spending $30,000 on something oversized and overcomplicated. That made it a quiet hero for small business owners trying to stretch every dollar. But that practicality became a liability when a subtle line of bureaucratic guidance turned the Scrum from a registered vehicle into a banned machine. In early 2024, a footnote buried in an internal guidance memo from the Illinois Secretary of State's office cited updated federal safety interpretations. That single reference was used by local departments to begin rejecting all new and renewed registrations for mini-trucks, including the Mazda Scrum, even if they had previously passed inspection and had valid paperwork. There was no press conference, no public hearing, no legislation, just a change in interpretation that took place behind closed doors and began rippling outward. Owners were confused. Calls to local offices yielded inconsistent answers. Some officials blamed federal compliance. Others cited state-level discretion, but no one could point to a law or regulation that had actually changed. It was policy by implication, a footnote with real-world consequences. The impact was immediate. Utility companies, small contractors, and independent delivery services that had relied on these vehicles were suddenly told they could no longer register or legally operate them on state roads. Some tried appealing. Others swapped plates with trailers or off-road tags, but most were forced to scramble for expensive replacements, often doubling or tripling their operating costs overnight. Illinois did not stage a dramatic crackdown. Instead, it quietly changed the rules of the game without public debate, and that's what made it so dangerous. And that playbook would get copied in one of the most surprising places next. Before we dive into the next state, let us know what you think in the comments below. Have you experienced any issues with your vehicle registration? And if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Oregon, a farming state that turned on farmers. The Honda Acti had long been a quiet favorite among Oregon's small-scale farmers, vineyard owners, and rural tradesmen. With its tight turning radius, minimal fuel consumption, and ability to haul tools or crates over uneven terrain, it was the definition of functional simplicity. The Acti's compact size made it perfect for narrow vineyard lanes and mountain farms, where larger trucks either got stuck or caused damage. Priced affordably and built with bulletproof mechanical components, it was the workhorse of Oregon's organic farming renaissance, ideal for people who valued sustainability, efficiency, and low operating costs. So when state authorities began denying registration renewals for these trucks in early 2024, the farming community was stunned. The official reasoning cited a vague term, non-conformance with evolving motor vehicle criteria. In practice, it meant the vehicles were disqualified not because of emissions, performance, or safety violations, but simply because they no longer fit an administrative definition. For small producers, the fallout was immediate. Many had invested thousands of dollars importing and customizing their mini trucks to meet Oregon's regulatory requirements. Now, with no grace period or warning, these vehicles were relegated to private property use only. Even more frustrating was the inconsistency. One owner could register an Acti in Lane County, while another just miles away in Marion County was rejected at the DMV counter. The rules weren't changing, only their interpretation. What made the situation feel like betrayal was Oregon's reputation. This was a state that prided itself on green policy, local agriculture, and reducing emissions, yet it was banning vehicles that used less fuel, took up less space, and helped small farmers survive in a tough economy. Some farmers who switched to older domestic trucks found themselves burning more fuel, dealing with more breakdowns, and spending far more on repairs, all because their efficient imports had suddenly been labeled a compliance risk. But if Oregon's farm ban stings, the next state's decision hit parents and schools instead. New York, the school zone blacklist. In New York, where pickup trucks are often seen as essential tools for both work and weather, no one expected the ban to start with school children. But that's exactly what happened when districts in several upstate counties began quietly restricting access to school zones for parents driving Japanese mini trucks like the Honda Acti or Subaru Sambar. These small, fuel-efficient vehicles had gained popularity among rural families and working-class residents who needed something reliable, maneuverable, and affordable, especially in snowy or narrow road conditions. Parents used them for everything from grocery runs to school drop-offs. Their low profiles, excellent visibility, and slow speed capability made them perfect for busy parking lots and school pickup lines. But by late 2023, several districts began turning those same trucks away. The justification? Visual obstruction and lack of compliance with motor vehicle safety guidance. Some schools even went so far as to prohibit them from entering parking lots at all, forcing parents to walk their children in from the street. The bans didn't come from the Department of Motor Vehicles or from the state legislature. They came from superintendents and school boards responding to informal recommendations issued by state administrative staff. There were no tests conducted, no incidents cited, no traffic violations reported. Yet somehow, these trucks were deemed inappropriate for school environments, despite their slow speeds, narrow widths, and outstanding maneuverability. Some families pushed back. They contacted local representatives, wrote to school boards, and organized online. But without a central rule to challenge, there was little recourse. The ban wasn't a law. It was a suggestion, followed as if it were policy. And for working-class families who had chosen K-trucks to save money and operate responsibly, that suggestion was just enough to cause chaos. The next ban wasn't local, it was algorithmic. California, flagged by the vehicle identification number. The Honda Acti pickup truck became a staple among California's small business operators and tradespeople for one simple reason. It worked. With its compact design, ultra-efficient engine under 660 cubic centimeters, and a curb weight below 1,500 pounds, The Acti could easily weave through tight alleys, park in cramped urban loading zones, and carry surprising cargo in its flatbed. But in 2023, that practicality collided head-on with California's automated registration system. Business owners began noticing a strange pattern. Applications to register imported Honda Acti trucks were being instantly rejected, not by clerks, but by a computer system. The Department of Motor Vehicles had implemented a back-end update that flagged imported vehicle identification numbers associated with Japanese K-Class trucks. The moment the vehicle's identification number was entered, the system returned a red flag, non-compliant. There was no warning, no public bulletin, no grace period. Owners who had legally imported and registered their trucks under federal law were being denied renewal, and new applicants were rejected outright. More frustrating, the system offered no human override. Even local clerks, who had previously processed these registrations without issue, were now powerless. The consequences rippled through California's service industries. Landscapers and electricians who had bought Acti pickups for their maneuverability and fuel economy were suddenly forced to park them indefinitely or risk fines. Deliveries stalled. Appointments were missed. Some owners tried to fight the decision by contacting the Department of Motor Vehicles, only to be passed between automated menus, generic email addresses, and policy citations with no clear origin. No one could identify the specific statute that had changed, because there wasn't one. It was enforcement through software. But next, we head to the state where this entire saga quietly began. Maine, the blueprint for every ban. The Daihatsu Hijet was never flashy, but that was exactly its strength, especially in a place like Maine. With winding rural roads, tight village main streets, and unpredictable weather, the Hijet was perfect for small farms, snowplow crews, and local maintenance workers. Its four-wheel drive, compact wheelbase, and incredible fuel efficiency made it one of the most practical utility trucks for the Pine Tree State. It could squeeze into spaces full-size pickups couldn't, and it cost a fraction of the price. Not just to buy, but to maintain. That practicality didn't save it. In the spring of 2022, Maine became the first state to retroactively cancel valid registrations for imported K-trucks like the Daihatsu Hijet. Owners began receiving formal letters from the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, informing them that their trucks were no longer road legal. Many of these vehicles had been registered for years, fully compliant under the 25-year federal exemption rule. There were no accidents, no safety recalls, no emissions violations, just a sudden policy redefinition. The reason? An internal administrative update that reclassified mini-trucks as off-road only vehicles, despite their federal legal status. This wasn't a legislative act passed by the state legislature. It wasn't even a court ruling. It was simply a bureaucratic decision issued through updated internal guidance. And just like that, trucks that had passed inspection, paid taxes, and received plates were stripped of their status and their rights to be on the road. The retroactive nature of the enforcement made it particularly devastating. Many owners had customized their Hijets, spent money on repairs and emissions testing, or had even purchased their vehicles from state-licensed dealers. Now they were being told those investments no longer mattered. The value of their vehicles plummeted overnight. The state didn't offer refunds. There was no compensation, just silence and cancellation. But what Maine started, the next state took even further. Rhode Island, the copycat crackdown. The Subaru Sambar pickup truck earned a quiet following across Rhode Island's coastal towns and rural communities for being exactly what most modern trucks were not: light, efficient, and effortlessly maneuverable. Weighing under 1,500 pounds and powered by a fuel-sipping engine below 660 cubic centimeters, the Sambar pickup handled tight spaces, fishing docks, farm paths, and construction sites with ease. Its small footprint and surprisingly strong payload made it ideal for contractors, shellfish harvesters, and local landscaping crews. For many small business owners, it was the perfect alternative to oversized and overpriced domestic pickups. But in the summer of 2023, Rhode Island's Division of Motor Vehicles began rejecting registration applications for K-Class pickups, including the Subaru Sambar, using language lifted almost word for word from the enforcement guidance circulated by the state of Maine. The change was not legislative. It came through a shift in administrative policy, using internal interpretations of safety risk and compliance uncertainty as grounds for denial. And just like that, one of the smallest states in the country became one of the most aggressive in its enforcement against small foreign trucks. Owners who had already registered their Sambars began receiving letters notifying them of cancellation. The DMV cited mechanical unsuitability for road use, a phrase with no clear legal definition and no documented mechanical failures behind it. Calls to DMV offices yielded vague explanations, with staff referring to updated vehicle guidelines that were never made public. The most troubling part was the obvious coordination. The phrasing used in Rhode Island's revocation letters matched that of Maine's earlier memos, word for word. No independent study had been conducted. No crash data had been presented. It wasn't about Rhode Island evaluating its own roads or risks. It was about enforcement by imitation. While some states copied others, the next one drew its line in the sand. Texas, where small trucks sparked big action. In a state where the pickup truck is practically a cultural icon, it was the Honda Acti pickup, not the Ford F-Series, that quietly sparked a movement. Small, efficient, and brutally practical, the Acti pickup offered Texas ranchers, mail carriers, and repair technicians an affordable alternative to towering full-size trucks. With four-wheel drive capability, a curb weight around 1,500 pounds, and unbeatable fuel efficiency, the Acti slid through gates, ran fence lines, and backed into tight spots that larger trucks simply could not handle. But in early 2021, the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles issued new internal guidance discouraging the registration of imported K-Class trucks. While not an outright ban, the effect was the same. Many local tax offices began rejecting applications for Acti pickups and similar models, claiming they did not meet minimum compliance under Texas Transportation Code. The decision created instant confusion. Some counties allowed registrations, others did not. Some owners were told their trucks were legal one week and denied renewal the next. That bureaucratic limbo didn't sit well with Texans. A grassroots organization called the Lone Star Mini Truck Coalition quickly formed, composed of farmers, small business owners, veterans, and even local postal workers. They began a statewide campaign to challenge the DMV's inconsistent enforcement, contacting lawmakers, compiling vehicle safety data, and sharing economic impact stories. The pressure worked. In April of 2024, Senate Bill 1816 was signed into law. The bill clarified that vehicles legally imported under the 25-year federal exemption could not be barred from registration solely due to size or foreign origin. The Honda Acti pickup, and others like it, were back on the road. But not every state allowed the people to fight back. Pennsylvania, caught off guard. The Mitsubishi minicab pickup truck had become a quiet essential across Pennsylvania's rolling farmland, small towns, and crowded cities. Known for its simplicity, rugged dependability, and compact footprint, the minicab offered just enough truck without all the excess. Its engine, under 660 cubic centimeters, sipped fuel instead of guzzling it. With a flatbed that could carry feed, lumber, tools, or landscaping supplies, the minicab became a top choice for Amish farms, warehouse staff, and suburban contractors trying to avoid the rising costs of full-size trucks. In a state where roads range from rural gravel paths to narrow colonial streets, the minicab was a perfect fit, until it was quietly erased from legality. In early 2024, owners began encountering an unexpected problem. Without prior notice or a single public announcement, registration renewals for Mitsubishi minicab trucks were being denied. There was no press release, no law change, and no online bulletin. For many, the first sign of trouble came at the Department of Motor Vehicles counter. Clerks would scan the vehicle's record, pause, and then deliver the news. The truck could no longer be registered for road use. No paperwork issue, no emissions violation, just rejection and confusion. The most shocking part wasn't just the denial, but the lack of explanation. Owners received vague references to compliance concerns or classification updates, but no one could provide a statute or regulation that had changed. For trucks that had been in use for years, legally imported under the 25-year exemption, and previously inspected, the sudden revocation felt like betrayal. Farmers and small business owners were left with stranded assets, unable to renew tags or transfer ownership. Some tried to fight back, but without a formal ban to appeal, the resistance had no clear target. Calls to state offices resulted in long holds and unclear answers. Online forums lit up with similar stories. Minicab owners from Lancaster to Erie all reporting identical denials, but with no central documentation. It was regulation by silence, and that silence was costing people their livelihoods. If that felt sudden, the next state proved even more aggressive. Washington, hiding behind emissions. In Washington state, a region known for environmental leadership, the Daihatsu Hi-Jet pickup truck had quietly gained a foothold among off-grid builders, food co-ops, orchard operators, and sustainable contractors. The four-wheel drive models performed well on the state's hilly terrain and rainy roads, while their fuel efficiency made them perfect for long days of stop-and-go city driving or hauling supplies between greenhouses. They were inexpensive, easy to repair, and offered just enough bed space for the state's many small businesses trying to do more with less. But in late 2023, Washington's Department of Licensing began systematically rejecting registration applications for K-Class pickups, citing air quality standards. On paper, the decision aligned with the state's aggressive emissions goals. In practice, however, the enforcement didn't make scientific sense. Several independent mechanics and automotive inspectors across the state tested the emissions outputs of banned mini-trucks like the Daihatsu Hi-Jet and discovered that many of them outperformed older domestic pickups that were still legal to drive. The hypocrisy didn't stop there. In King County, vehicles from the early 1990s that lacked catalytic converters were passing emissions tests, while K-pickups, designed for dense Japanese urban centers, were failing before they could even be tested. The reason? Classification. Washington had reclassified these trucks as off-road-only vehicles, exempting them from standard emissions testing, and then used that exemption as the basis to deny road access. The inconsistency of the enforcement led many to believe that emissions were merely a convenient excuse, a justification cloaked in environmental language that hid an underlying push to eliminate non-domestic utility trucks. The fact that the bans weren't backed by new laws or scientific testing made the move feel less like regulation and more like exclusion, and that hypocrisy only gets worse from here. Michigan, where safety is selective. In Michigan, the symbolic heart of American auto manufacturing, trucks are more than vehicles. They're a legacy, but even legacies reveal contradictions, and nowhere is that clearer than in the state's approach to small imported pickup trucks. While Michigan continues to allow 1960s domestic pickups on the road, many of which lack seatbelts, crumple zones, or even functioning emission systems, it has quietly banned K-Class pickups from the 1990s that include airbags, reinforced frames, and basic modern safety features. The vehicle most affected? The Daihatsu Hi-Jet, a dependable compact workhorse built to move cargo efficiently in tight spaces without excessive fuel use. The Hi-Jet pickup had built a loyal following in Michigan's rural townships and industrial yards. It was a favorite for maintenance crews, landscaping companies, and farm operators who appreciated its minimal footprint and generous load capacity. With a bed large enough to carry tools, mulch, or even livestock feed, and an engine efficient enough to go days without a fill-up, it offered functional, low-cost versatility in a region where operating margins were slim. Then, in early 2024, the state began quietly rejecting renewals and new registrations for many K-Class pickups. No formal policy was announced. Owners were told at local Department of Motor Vehicles offices that their trucks were no longer suitable for Michigan roadways. The rationale, when pressed, boiled down to a vague phrase: historical familiarity. According to officials, older domestic trucks, despite lacking basic safety components, were understood by law enforcement and regulatory staff. K-trucks, meanwhile, were labeled unfamiliar, difficult to classify, and outside the expected vehicle standard. The double standard was blatant. Trucks from the 1960s without seatbelts or structural reinforcement continued to cruise legally through Michigan's backroads. But a 1997 Daihatsu Hi-Jet, equipped with seatbelts, crumple zones, and a safer center of gravity, was deemed unfit for the same roads. There were no crash studies presented, no data offered, just a reliance on perception over performance, and an unspoken bias against imported innovation. Our last state didn't ban these trucks retroactively. It never let them in to begin with. Massachusetts, the preemptive strike. Before most Americans even heard about the crackdown on K-trucks, Massachusetts was already one step ahead, and not in a good way. In the spring of 2024, the state's Registry of Motor Vehicles began circulating an internal blacklist. The document named specific K-Class pickup trucks, including the Honda Acti and Suzuki Carry, as vehicles not eligible for registration. It wasn't a public law, and it wasn't subject to a vote. It was internal policy dressed up as administrative guidance, and it changed everything for vehicle owners across the state. Unlike other states that revoked registrations after the fact, Massachusetts moved proactively. Owners who had legally imported K pickups were rejected at the counter before they even completed their applications. The registry clerk cited model restrictions, compliance concerns, and pending safety review status. In practice, this meant that no matter the condition of the truck, no matter how clean the paperwork, approval was impossible. And because the policy wasn't public, owners didn't even know they were being targeted until it was too late. The trucks themselves were nothing out of the ordinary. The Honda Acti pickup, known for its durability and four-wheel drive handling, was used by handymen, farmers, and tradespeople alike. The Suzuki Carry, with its impressive bed-to-body ratio and reliable drivetrain, had become popular among landscapers and electricians. Both models were federally legal under the 25-year import rule. But Massachusetts wasn't interested in federal legality. It was interested in control. The move sparked swift outrage. Within days, a Facebook advocacy group formed and quickly swelled to over 900 members. Owners began compiling documentation, organizing testimony, and pressuring state officials to respond. Public hearings were held. Department heads were questioned. And on September 18th, the Registry of Motor Vehicles made an unexpected announcement. K trucks would be allowed to register temporarily, pending further safety review. And that may be the clearest sign yet that this isn't just about safety, it's about control. We're just scratching the surface of what's happening across the country. If you want to stay informed and be part of the conversation, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on future updates. We've got more insights coming your way, and you won't want to miss it.